Hello, BookTube. Chelsea, the Reading Outlaw, here to do a book review that you guys knew was coming because I told you we were going to have to talk about it. We are here today to talk about A Little Life by Hanya Yanagihara. I'm going to pick the book up in a minute, but it's super heavy, so for right now it's just going to chill down there. I finished this book a couple weeks ago and then went into a very dark spiral where I didn't really feel up to reading much of anything, and I spent a lot of time knitting and a lot of time watching the back seasons of The Real Housewives of Beverly Hills and just kind of restocking my inner shelves with lots of cotton candy and fluff and easy digestible thing. That phase is done, and I have processed and I have thought and I've talked to many people for a very long time about my feelings on this book. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. So, picking this bad boy up. This is my hardback copy of A Little Life by Hanya Yanagihara. This is the cover I have. I just thought it would be interesting to show it because Hanya talks in several talks about being inspired by photography and being inspired particularly by this photo and by the amount of anguish in this photo and how that could influence and translate to her writing. So I thought it would be, an interesting thing to show you guys the cover, tell you that little story. So first we're going to talk about it in a non-spoilery way. This is not going to be a positive review, you guys. So if this book is one of your absolute favorite Paragon books, maybe just don't watch this video, okay? That's fine. It's cool. There will be another video in a couple of days. You can come back. I won't feel bad. I won't tell anybody. It's fine. You don't need to feel bad. You just don't want to hear me not, loving on your favorite book, and I totally get that. So maybe don't stick around. But in a non-spoiler free way, I felt this book was manipulative. I felt that this book was unrealistic, not necessarily in its portrayals of Jude's tragedy, but in the portrayals of the actions of the people that surround Jude. I felt that this book was at no point really an enjoyable reading experience. When I first talked about this book, I talked about the relationship between the four boys and how much I was really enjoying seeing that pan out. Well, shortly after I told you guys that just kind of stopped. I feel it's kind of a disservice. Everyone who said that this book is about Jude and his four friends, it's really not. This book is about Jude and his friend Willem. Mainly it's about Jude. Our other characters, JB and Malcolm, are cursory at best. In kind of the ranking, we learn almost nothing about Malcolm. We learn a little bit more about JB. We learn some about William, and then the entire book basically focuses on Jude and the other people in his life. So that camaraderie aspect and that guys with each other going through college aspect really stopped playing a huge part in this book, which is the kind of beginning of when I felt that my enjoyment started to go downhill. Are you guys done looking at it? Can I put it down now? It's heavy enough that I don't want to have to mess with it. And so I just feel like from the beginning of this book to the end of this book is a nonstop barrage of sorrow and of pain, and I understand that that's what Hanya Yanagihara was trying to accomplish. I don't necessarily think that the portrayal of the events that Jude goes through in this book are supposed to be realistic. I don't think we're supposed to read it and then go, yeah, that could all totally happen to one person. That level of abuse could all happen to one person. That's a true story. I think it's about things that do happen to people and putting them all on one character as a fictitious exercise in exploring the depths of sorrow and the depths of damage that a person's soul and body can take and come back from or not come back from. And that's an interesting study to me. I just felt that the heavy hand with which it was played did a disservice to the overall course of the book. And if she had made different decisions, especially about some of the things that happen in Jude's later life, that message would have been able to stand out a little bit more, as opposed to getting to the point where I almost felt like this book was a mockery of people who suffer or was exploitative, let me know down below, of the people who do go through some of these events, saying that, oh, well, that can't necessarily be bad enough. Let's see what else you can take. I gave this book 3 stars on Goodreads, but that is because of the lack of half stars. I actually gave it 2.5 stars for me personally, because I can't give it I can't give it 1 star because I finished it. And I try and reserve 1-star books for books that I DNF. And like I said, there was really no point in time in which I wanted to DNF this book. I wanted to keep reading. But so many things happened and I had so many feelings that ended up being negative feelings by the end of it that I had to go with a 2.5 stars. So that is the spoiler free part of the video. If you don't want to learn anything else, go ahead and click away now. Thanks for stopping by. Feel free to comment down below. Check me out all over the internet, just like usual. If you don't care about spoilers, or if you've read the book and you want to know more about what I think, stay tuned. And welcome back, everybody. Hello. Welcome to the spoiler rant part of today's review. I could not stand this book anymore after Willem died. I had such a gut visceral reaction to that scene that I literally chucked the book across my office, which took some explanation and was very weird for some of the coworkers I have who share my office space. But I just felt like with as much happened to Jude and the fact that like I was even on board with what happened to Jude. I was willing to kind of go with Hanya Yanagihara and this experiment she was conducting on human suffering. I was like, okay, kind of as soon as I realized it wasn't necessarily supposed to be realistic, I was like, all right, we're going to go with this, see how it plays out. That's fine. And then when she killed Willem for no fucking reason, that's when I was just like, no, I'm sorry. I felt so emotionally manipulated. I felt emotionally battered, and not in the way that I think Hanya Yanagihara intended, that I just decided that this was not a book that I was going to be able to end up liking. I feel from that point on, the fact that they refused to let Jude take his life after the scope and depth of tragedy that he'd been through in this book is incredibly heartbreaking. I feel like he absolutely should have been allowed to make that decision. I believe people deserve to die with whatever dignity they choose to possess and through whatever means they choose to do so. I feel as though, especially in the case of somebody like Jude, to prevent him from doing so is unnecessarily cruel and is just one example of things. Like I said in the beginning, my problem with this book is not necessarily in Jude. It is in the behavior of the people of those who surround Jude. Jude is surrounded by enablers, and having been with and surrounded by people who go through issues of substance abuse, who go through issues of self-harm, or mental abuse or what have you, I feel as though the actions of the people who surround you in this book are almost unforgivable. It is difficult. It is awkward. People will be incredibly angry. You will lose people that you love if you make those decisions, but you do not escape culpability if you continue to sit by with the knowledge of what these people are doing. And by these people, I mean Jude, with the knowledge of what Jude is doing, and you say and do nothing to combat it. There is nobody at any point in time in this book that really does anything. There's one time at which Jude is committed out of the hundreds of times that he probably should be because of the depth of his self-harm. Because of the way people in Jude's life reacted to Jude, I just felt that I could not, I felt that I was aiding and abetting this horrible behavior from a fictional character just by participating and not actually being able to do anything, even though what can you do when it's a fictional character? So I became incredibly frustrated with the people in Jude's life and the way that the people in Jude's life reacted to him. And I mean, obviously there were portions of this book that I found interesting enough that I did keep reading. I think that there are some kind of pearls of really interesting ideas in here. Things like, do we choose how we get to die? Do we get to die with dignity? What do we do with loved ones we have that are suffering to such an extent that we can't really understand it? What do we do with people who won't let us in? How do we help people who don't want help? All of these questions are great, but they just get covered in these layers of what is essentially tragedy porn for Jude. And then there are other issues that are more minor to me, but are still worth noting, such as the fact that there's complete bisexual erasure in this book, that Willem is a character who sleeps with both men and women, and when he decides to be in a long-term committed relationship with Jude, he completely shuns anything having to do with terms like homosexual or bisexual, which is like, you may identify how you choose to identify, and that is fine. But to not acknowledge that being a man sleeping with a man takes you out of that heterosexual, like that fully heterosexual category, does a disservice to bisexual and homosexual people, and it's erasure and it's silence, and I don't like it. I don't like it because it doesn't need to happen. There's absolutely no reason that Willem couldn't have been like, yes, I'm a bisexual. It's the 21st century. I'm an actor. Like, it happens. So and it's little things like that. Also, I feel like there's some severe malpractice going on between Jude and Andy, his doctor. I feel like there's some professional behavior that Andy takes that would not be classified as quality medical ethics if they were to be, transposed into real life. And on the whole, I feel like I'm going down some tangent-y path. So I'm trying to avoid doing that because this video is already probably going to be like 15 minutes long. But I just felt as though this book did not have enough positives to outweigh the overwhelming amount of negatives. I feel as though this is one of those books that's going to be incredibly important and going to be appearing on a lot of awards lists and discussion lists and bestseller lists in the years to come. I mean, it's already been on the Man Booker list. It's on this year's Bailey's Women's Fiction Prize list. It's going to be everywhere. And so I am glad that I've read it so that I can have an opinion about it when people are talking about it. But I feel as though Hanya Yanagihara, as a woman writer of color, has done things in this book with gender and with erasure and with silence on several levels that I find to be odd and to not be the best authorial choices that she could make in the context of this book. So I did not care for this book. I know lots of people out there absolutely adore it. It is the favorites of several people, and it took me a while to figure out how I felt about this book. I want to give you reassurance that if you are reading or have read this book and you don't know how to feel when you finish it, that's okay. I didn't know how I felt either. I had to talk to Caitlin from Kitty G and James from James Chatham. I will link both their channels down below, but I did a buddy read of this along with them. So I had to talk to them about it. I went and I watched several review videos, both positive and negative. I will link those down below, especially Max, Holly's, and Mercedes videos. They kind of took the most polar opposite viewpoints. And I just kind of had to watch those videos and be like, see what I agreed with from each person, and then literally make kind of like a plus minus column as to how I felt about this book. But the more I talked about it and the more I thought about it and the more I let it sit with me, the more negative my feelings became. And so I wanted to go ahead and make this review while I still could point out some of the positive aspects about it, because I have a feeling if you ask me about this book in another 6 months, it's just going to be all ranty, ranty, rant. So those are my thoughts. Those are my feelings. Please let me know down below if you've read it, what you thought, if you haven't read it, if you think you're going to. Always interested in chatting about books. And of course, you can always look me up on Instagram, Twitter, Goodreads, all over the internet. I am always here to chat reading. All right, guys, have a happy week, and I will see you later.